Arrival in Bethlehem. The world snapped back into focus with the jarring suddenness of a dropped hammer. One moment, they were adrift in a kaleidoscope of swirling colors and distorted spacetime. The next, they were bathed in the warm, surprisingly familiar glow of a late afternoon sun. The Chronos, miraculously intact, settled gently onto a patch of soft, yielding earth. The air, thick with the scent of wood smoke and something akin to baking bread, was a stark and breathtaking contrast to the metallic tang of ozone that had clung to them for so long. Silence reigned for a long, breathless moment, broken only by the rhythmic thump of their own hearts. Then, a collective sigh, a mixture of relief and awe, escaped their lips. They had made it. They had arrived. But the relief was short-lived, quickly replaced by a wave of sensory overload. The vibrant tapestry of sights and sounds, the sheer abundance of life teeming around them, was overwhelming after their decades of existence in a world ravaged by ash and despair. Cole, ever the observer, was the first to break the silence. He cautiously opened the Chronos' hatch, his gaze sweeping across the landscape. Before him lay a small village, nestled amongst rolling hills, its buildings constructed of sun-baked clay and stone. Donkey carts laden with pottery and woven fabrics meandered through narrow, dusty streets. Children, their faces smudged with dirt and laughter, chased pigeons in the village square. The scene pulsed with a vibrant energy, a palpable sense of community and life that stood in stark contrast to the desolate wasteland they had left behind. He couldn't believe his eyes, couldn't quite grasp the reality of their situation. It felt almost sacred. The air vibrated with a different kind of energy, far removed from the sterile, artificial hum of the Chronos' reactor. This was an energy born of human life, of human endeavor, of human connection. He inhaled deeply, savoring the fresh scent of earth and wood, of spices and sweat. It was the smell of life unburdened by the specter of impending doom. For the first time in a very long time, he felt a flicker of hope, not merely the desperate, clinging hope of survival, but a genuine, life-affirming hope for a better future. Bethlehem, he whispered, the name resonating with a depth of meaning that transcended its historical significance. He had studied this place, this insignificant village on the edge of the Roman Empire, for years. He had immersed himself in its history, its geography, its culture. But nothing could have truly prepared him for the sheer reality of being here, of breathing the same air, of walking the same ground as those who had lived and died here nearly 2,000 years ago. Anya, Elias, and Ben emerged from the Chronos, their faces etched with a mixture of wonder and disbelief. Their initial responses were muted, almost reverent. They had spent so long focused on the technical aspects of their journey, on the complexities of temporal displacement and gravitational physics, that they had perhaps underestimated the emotional impact of arriving in a world so different, so vibrantly alive. Julian, however, remained inside the Chronos, running diagnostic tests on the time machine. His face, grim and determined, betrayed none of the wonder that was so evident in the expressions of his team. He was a man focused on the task at hand, concerned with the safety and security of their mission above all else. Even the overwhelming beauty of Bethlehem couldn't distract him from the responsibility he carried. He needed to ensure that their escape was a success, not merely a temporal relocation, but a real chance for a better tomorrow. The emotional aspects could wait. The scientific considerations needed immediate attention. As Cole gazed upon Bethlehem, he felt a profound sense of connection to the past, a kinship with those who had walked these very streets centuries ago. He saw not just a historical setting, but a living, breathing community, its people working, laughing, celebrating life in the face of all odds. He recognized a mirror image of their own desperate struggle for survival, but in this past, the struggle was not yet lost. There was a resilience here, a spirit of faith and perseverance, that resonated deeply within him. The setting sun cast long shadows across the village. The air grew cooler, and a sense of quiet descended upon the scene. Smoke curled lazily from the chimneys of homes, and the distant bleating of sheep echoed across the hills. This wasn't the sterile, technological environment they had become accustomed to. This was raw, untamed nature, nurturing a community of people who lived in harmony with it. It was a life that was simple, perhaps even harsh at times, yet imbued with a sense of belonging and purpose that they had long since lost. Cole's keen eye, trained over years of historical research, picked up on details others might miss. The architecture, the clothing, the tools used by the villagers, all spoke of a culture both familiar and alien. He recognized elements of Roman influence in the layout of the village, alongside indigenous customs and beliefs that hinted at a rich tapestry of traditions dating back even further. He noticed the subtle differences in the way the villagers interacted with one another, their language, their customs, all indicators of a society vastly different from the one they knew. He focused his attention on the religious practices he saw evidence of in the small village. He had, after all, been guided by religious texts in planning this mission. The cryptic references in the Book of Enoch, combined with his own extensive research on ancient Jewish traditions, hinted towards a particular vulnerability in the temporal flow of the area. This village, and Bethlehem itself, served as a kind of hinge point, a moment where the fabric of time seemed particularly malleable, granting them the best possibility of entering and exiting without causing paradoxes or unforeseen consequences. As darkness descended, the village square came alive with the soft glow of oil lamps. He observed families gathering together, sharing meals, and engaging in conversation. The atmosphere was one of warmth and mutual support, a testament to the strength of the human spirit and the enduring power of faith. He saw in this the answer to their future, a life built not on scientific advancement and technological superiority alone, but on faith, resilience, and a sense of community. A life where the pursuit of knowledge and innovation wasn't at odds with spirituality and the human connection to a power larger than themselves. The night was filled with the sounds of traditional instruments, their melodies echoing through the narrow streets. The simplicity of their lives, the lack of the sophisticated technology that had both brought humanity to its brink and provided a possible escape route, was somehow profoundly moving. It was a humbling experience, a reminder that the essence of humanity lay not in its technological achievements, but in its capacity for love, compassion, and faith. This was the seed they needed to plant in the ashes of tomorrow. The human spirit, even amidst desolation, could endure and create something beautiful and lasting. Bethlehem, in its quiet simplicity, offered a potent lesson in survival and renewal. It offered hope. It offered faith. And, perhaps, the possibility of a future worthy of preserving. This, Cole understood, was the true meaning of their mission, to not just survive, but to thrive, to learn and grow, and to build a better future on the foundations of the past. The arrival in Bethlehem was more than a mere arrival, it was a homecoming, a return to the very roots of their humanity. Cultural clash. The initial days were a blur of sensory overload. The smells, the pungent aroma of roasting lamb, the sweet tang of dates, the earthy scent of unwashed bodies, assaulted their nostrils. The sounds, the bleating of goats, the chatter of the marketplace, the rhythmic clang of a blacksmith's hammer, were a constant, vibrant hum. The sights, the brightly colored robes of the villagers, the intricate patterns woven into their textiles, the stark, sun-baked architecture, were a visual feast unlike anything they had ever encountered. Their attempts at communication were initially disastrous. Their modern English, even in its most simplified form, was utterly incomprehensible to the villagers. Gestures, facial expressions, and painstakingly drawn pictures proved to be far more effective. They learned quickly that a smile and a shared meal could bridge even the widest cultural gaps. Cole, with his extensive knowledge of Aramaic and a rudimentary understanding of Latin, took on the role of primary translator, painstakingly deciphering the nuances of the local dialect and helping his companions navigate the complexities of daily life. One of the most striking differences was the pervasive role of religion in everyday life. The villagers were devoutly observant of Jewish traditions, their days structured around prayer, ritual, and observance of the Sabbath. They observed the strict dietary laws, meticulously separating meat and dairy products, and meticulously cleaning their utensils before each meal. Their faith wasn't merely a Sunday morning ritual, it was woven into the very fabric of their existence, shaping their social interactions, their economic activities, and their worldview. This was a stark contrast to the largely secular society they had left behind, where faith was often relegated to a personal, private sphere. The stark differences in social dynamics were also striking. The village operated on a hierarchical system based on family lineage and social standing. Respect for elders was paramount, and decisions were made collectively, through discussions and consensus building. This cooperative approach to problem solving, while initially alien to their individualistic mindset, proved to be both effective and deeply satisfying. They witnessed a community united by shared faith, common goals, and a deep sense of interdependence. Anya, a gifted linguist, was particularly fascinated by the language, its subtle inflections and idiomatic expressions. She spent hours observing the villagers, meticulously documenting their vocabulary and grammar, gradually learning to speak the local dialect fluently. This helped them to deepen their relationships with the villagers, gaining access to a wider range of experiences and insights into their lives. Elias, an expert in materials science, found himself captivated by the villagers' craftsmanship. He observed the way they crafted pottery from locally sourced clay, the artistry and skill with which they wove textiles from plant fibers, and the ingenuity of their simple tools and machinery. His technical expertise allowed him to appreciate the depth of their knowledge and the resourcefulness of their approach to life, highlighting how much they could achieve with very little. Ben, a skilled engineer, became fascinated by the village's water management systems. The intricate network of canals and irrigation ditches, ingeniously designed to conserve and distribute water resources, showcased a level of sophisticated engineering that surpassed anything he could have imagined. He realized that their seemingly primitive technology was in fact a marvel of sustainable design, perfectly adapted to the local environment. The initial awkwardness gave way to a sense of belonging, a gradual integration into the rhythms of village life. They helped with harvesting olives, assisted in building a new section of the village wall, and even learned to bake bread in the communal oven. They participated in religious ceremonies, listening intently to the ancient prayers and hymns, feeling the deep resonance of faith in their souls. But the cultural differences were not always easy to bridge. There were moments of frustration, misunderstandings, and even conflict. The concept of personal space, for example, was vastly different. The villagers were accustomed to close physical contact, often embracing and touching one another as a sign of affection or friendship. This close physicality, so foreign to their modern sensibilities, often caused them discomfort. The social hierarchies presented further obstacles. Their efforts to be humble and respectful were sometimes met with suspicion, as their attire and behavior seemed to mark them as outsiders.